my name is Jordon Weideman. Like Peyton said, I'm over in the clinic just down the road. I've been asked to do a presentation today to honor Mental Health Awareness Month, which is what May is. Honestly, we could have taken this in so many different directions. There's a lot we could highlight when it comes to mental health, but really what I kind of felt like would be more appropriate is just really focusing on work stress and tools to be able to handle it, just because it's an everyday common occurrence, and in some respect, everyone deals with stress at work. So just going to keep it pretty informal and keep it moving. I have about 30 minutes, and I know to talk a lot, so I'm going to try to keep it rolling, but leave some time for questions at the end. All right. So today we're really just going to work on a little bit of managing work stress, kind of figuring out what that means, how we can tell when that stress is really creeping up, maybe to a level that we wanted to bring it down with. Talk a little bit about strategies for preventing burnout and really kind of understanding what burnout is and how we know when we're getting too close to that level. And then some self-care strategies and tools just to kind of help get some balance in our life to be able to manage our day-to-day. So we're going to start with managing work stress. So stress on the job is something that is almost every person experiences to some level and degree. At times the stress level might be really manageable, and it actually might be really positive. Stress is not necessarily a bad thing. It can help keep us motivated. It can actually help make us be more productive. It can kind of help us, get a little bit of that twinge of like, ooh, I didn't procrastinate, so let's get this done, and I feel good about that. So stress actually can be a very productive thing. However, it's when we become overwhelmed and almost like we're overly stimulated by our stress that it can be very harmful to us. And so when we think about our stress, we think about and we want to identify where are those actual sources of our stress coming from. We can really figure out where it's becoming overwhelming, then we know where we want to start working on how to manage it a little bit differently and kind of have a plan to reduce that stress. The common work stressors, areas that, to some degree, it's probably likely that stress is coming in at some capacity. So sometimes when we have different management styles or there's different office politics, sometimes it works really well for a certain person or an agency, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's ebbs and flows, and that's going to create friction at times. And so when we don't have styles that complement each other, sometimes that creates a little stress. Sometimes we have stress with our coworkers. When we have a large pool of coworkers, sometimes personalities just don't clash, and that's okay. We're not maybe everyone's cup of tea, and maybe they're not our cup of tea, but we want to work to have a good working professional relationship with them and trying to manage the stress and maybe some different, ways of handling things that we wouldn't necessarily do, but it do get under our skin at times. We're all human. Also, sometimes salary or compensation frustrations can add to stress. Things that maybe we anticipated that didn't happen, or there's, sometimes there's just technological issues that happen that cause stress that we have to work through, we have to bring up, we have to, maybe be in negotiation for. Either way, that's an area that oftentimes brings a lot of, unease. Sometimes overtime hours, which I'm sure being in aviation, that's something everyone's experienced to some level. Is, sometimes the things have to be done that we put in those extra hours. Sometimes we get a lull in things that then we're maybe running out of hours and where you don't know how to fill our time. Those things that ebb and flow that are out of our control can be a really strong source of stress from time to time, depending on how it fits in our environment. Inconvenient hours, I think a lot of times we think of like night shift. When we think of like, sometimes they just don't align with other things we need to do. I mean, how many times have you gotten off work and went, crap, the bank's closed. I actually can't go do this dentist appointment. I'll have to take off time for this. That can be a really strong sense of stress because it doesn't fit with the way the rest of the world is running. Sometimes we can get very overstimulated with our senses where we're at. Things like being in a really noisy place can sometimes feel very overwhelming to us. Being in a very temperature sensitive place, like being in a shop that's just really overly hot, being really, really cold, being in an unregulated place can really mess with our senses. A lot of light, I know a lot of people maybe get more sensitive to fluorescent lights than others, or if you're constantly going in and out of a dark place to a light place, you go outside and get blinded by the sun, then you go back into your cave of an office, it's going to impact you. And all of those senses getting so bombarded are going to be overwhelming at times, and it's going to be sometimes hard to manage that stress. Sometimes there's inadequate credit for accomplishments. When we work really hard, we put in our blood, sweat, and tears into things, and we feel like maybe something wasn't recognized. Or maybe we feel like things were recognized, but not really the way we expected. Those can feel very disappointing. Those can feel very stressful. Like, why am I putting in all this effort, but I don't feel like people are seeing it? And that can create tension. It could be deadlines, it can be evaluations, it can be just really overly difficult or overly simplified tasks. Like, it's just such a range of things that can create a lot of stress. Sometimes we're overwhelmed by the amount of steps in a task we have to do. And sometimes we're almost a little bored because it's a lull and we don't know how to fill our time. And that's so new to us that creates stress. So it's really no one size fits all when we're talking about workplace. And then obviously, like, job security concerns. Sometimes there's a swing in the market. Sometimes there's just a big life shift, and we just really don't know, where's my place? Am I going to feel secure? Am I going to have a job tomorrow? Those types of things tend to bring up a lot of stress in a lot of different ways for different people. So we need to appraise our stress. We need to be able to really look and focus on our stress and figure out which one is it? Can it be positive or is it negative? We really either view them on one or the other way. So work stress is the relationship between the stressors on the job and how we react to them physically and emotionally. So it does impact our body as well as our mind. And so when we're getting to that reaction, it's going to depend on a few different things. One is going to look at how we actually think about that stress, our perceptions and our interpretation of that. And how we're thinking about that is either going to help us view it in a positive way, or it's going to come out and be a really negative feeling. Sometimes our expectations and our predictions of what's going to happen. So if we come at this thinking, wow, this is going to suck. This person's going to be so hard on me and I'm not going to like it. Well, then we're already kind of going at it thinking the worst. And we're going to go into that, and that stress is just going to continue to hound on us. Sometimes when we have memories of similar situations, if you've had a situation that was very stressful in a negative way, and you go into something that reminds you of that, you're going to automatically bring up that past experience and know that's exactly what's going to happen. Except for we don't know that. There's no evidence to necessarily assure you that that's how it's going to go out. But because we've had that experience, that's what we're going to assume is going to happen again. And sometimes, how much support we feel or how we think we can cope with it really determines how well we feel going into it. If we feel pretty confident in our abilities to manage our stress, when we feel like, I've been through hard things before, I'll get through this, I know what to do for myself, we're going to go in a lot more calm way. We might be able to think about what, some of the positives might be. Where's the silver lining in this situation? However, if we go in there, not sure how it's going to impact us, and really thinking like, this is going to kick me on my butt, I'm not going to be able to deal with this, and this is just one more thing that I have to do. It's going to automatically put us in that position to already expect the worst. Which leads us to changing our thoughts. So our perceptions are all about our thoughts. And the way our thoughts go are definitely going to impact how we feel about it. So catching it at the thought level is really going to be helpful to determine whether we're going to be able to think about it in a somewhat positive manner, look for the opportunities for positive or not. So changing the way we think. Sometimes we can get really irrational in our thoughts the more stress we feel. So asking yourself, is this fact or is this just my opinion? Do I have actual evidence to suggest that this is going to go the way I think it is? That it is going to feel very negative? Or is that just my assumption? Is that just my opinion? Would others think that's true? If you made a mistake and the immediate thought is, I'm going to get fired. Would other people going through that same situation feel that way? If they saw it from the outside, would they assume you're going to get fired? That's one way to help us challenge our thoughts to see, is that really true? Am I using exaggerated words like always, never, nothing? Those kind of absolute statements are very irrational, because the moment you say, you always do this, that person's gonna say, well, I can think of at least 5 examples where I didn't. And so to keep it in that absolute term is to create that real negative perspective. And am I ignoring the positives? You know, were there things involved in that particular incident that maybe I just dismissed, that actually were positive, that people noticed and can actually say, you know, it wasn't as bad as it sounded. It really didn't go as badly as you thought it did. You're just focusing on what you did wrong instead of also what all did you try? What are some of the good things that came out of this too? And sometimes we have to think about the worst case scenario and how am I going to cope with that? So if you can think of the worst case scenario of what's going to happen as a result of that stressor, and you can figure out, well, this is how I would deal with it, then we can get through that and we can know that it's not that big of a deal. We can get through that difficult moment, because not saying the worst will happen, but if it does happen, I got this. And what are the parts of the situation can I really control? Most of the time, negative environmental stress, negative work stress comes with certain level of things that are just out of our control. It's the factors that we couldn't have seen coming, or even if we could have seen coming, it's not like we could stop them. Those are the things that add a lot more weight to that negative experience. They bring about guilt, they bring about distress and maybe some anxiety. And if we hold on to those and we, you know, pretend like we could have done something about them, we're just going to put that extra burden on our shoulders. Instead, when we, you know, can identify, well, you know what, I could not have predicted the weather. I could not have predicted that this would go this way. I need to let that piece go and focus on what I can control and whether I feel like I did a good job doing that. All right, so this is going into how do we change our behavior. So a lot of it comes down to this kind of triangle of events. First, our thoughts, and then how our thoughts influence how we feel about it. And how we feel about it influences what we do about it. What are our actual actions in response to this? So when we're stressed, especially at work, we need to be able to do things in our day-to-day that actually help us bring down that stress level and not ramp us up. So things like taking a break. I know it sounds super simple, and most people, when they're really stressed, are immediately going to say, I don't have time for a break. Well, make time for a break, because even a quick 5-minute walk around break could clear your mind just enough to go be another hour and a half. It could be just that little bit that pushes you over the edge of being able to manage it. So step away from your desk, take a short break, stretch. And that kind of leads us into the next one, exercise. Regular movement. It doesn't have to be formal exercise. You don't have to be on a, you know, really strict regimen, but movement of your body is going to be really helpful for letting go of that stress. It's actually doing a lot for your muscles and your mind, because when we're stressed, we release a whole bunch of chemicals, a whole bunch of hormones. This cortisol, stress hormone, in large doses is very, very toxic to our bodies. So movement will help you detox that from your body. Relax. Find ways to help yourself get down from that stress level. This can be progressive muscle relaxation, which is a skill. It can just be, you know, rest. It can be mindfulness. It can be yoga. It could be stretching. It could be so many things that just help you to take a breath. And then enjoy life. You know, when we have things outside of work that we actually enjoy, that makes life meaningful, that we actually get some pleasure out of, it balances out the work we do, and it balances out the stress we experience while doing that work. And so when we have things to look forward to outside of work, we tend to do better managing that stress, because it's okay, if I can just get through the next couple hours, I'm on vacation, I'm on break, we're gonna go to this weekend, and I like that. It gives us something positive to focus on that can help us reduce that stress. Time management is also a really big one, because how we manage our time kind of helps us devote either time towards doing things that are going to help us managing that stress and get through that stress, or we're going to continue to spiral. We're going to continue to get stuck in this loop we're just ramping our stress levels up, and we're continuously doing the things that drain us, but not fulfill us. So things like, we need to reevaluate our work ethic. If it's just a little too strenuous, if we have the ability to control, to say, I just need this little time to where I have to go pick up my kid, or I have to make sure the rest of this moves smoothly, maybe we need to address that. Being able to say no, not now, not me. I think it's a very big value that we are able to help each other out. I think it's a very big teamwork mentality to say, yeah, I'll stay later and I'll help with this with that. And sometimes we need that, and sometimes we need to come together and do that. But I think we can all agree that every time that happens, there's usually one person that's always safe, always puts in that extra. That person could be burning out too. Sometimes it's okay to say no. And as long as we help each other kind of balance that out, you have a lot going on in your personal life. It's okay. You go home, you go deal with them. We'll stay, we'll get this done. The next time around, maybe it's me who needs that time away. Maybe it's me that needs to say no. So being able to say and speak up for what you need. Time frame and scheduling tasks, which also goes down into scheduling a break. It's no secret that when we have a very busy packed schedule, our little bit of free time, our little bit of unclaimed time gets eaten up so quickly. It doesn't matter what it is, you leave it, it will fill. So if you're going to wait for a natural break to occur, something will snag that spot. We need to schedule our breaks. We need to schedule our playtime. We need to schedule our enjoyment of things and protect it. So that way we actually get to utilize it, we get to enjoy it. Because otherwise, we won't be saying no, and we'll just fill it with other tasks. And keep a running list of things to do, with the anticipation that you're not going to get to all of it. It is a running list. If it gets moved to the next day, that's okay. And we prioritize what has to be done in this time frame and what can get pushed off. And as that gets pushed off, that becomes the next priority. It just helps us time manage our focuses, so we don't get so overwhelmed with saying, I have 12 things and they're all very important and I have to do them all right now. Well, how feasible is that? How realistic is it that you're going to split yourself into 12 people and go get every one of those tasks done? It's not. Spoiler alert. All of this, when not managed, does lead to burnout. And so we really want to make sure we catch it before it gets to that level, so that way we can get ahead of it and prevent that. So burnout is a prolonged and a really severe stress at work, and it's not being managed. So when we don't relieve that stress, it creates that really emotional and psychologically crippling state. And that's where we just have nothing left to give. And so the reason why this becomes a really big issue is because when we become overwhelmed with that stage of burnout, we're done. If you think about we're batteries, we're essentially glorified batteries. Everything we do is drawing a charge from us, and we're giving away a little bit of a charge every time we do something. But if we don't take a moment and stop and recharge ourselves, eventually we kill that battery, and that battery's done. To recharge a dead battery takes a long time. So that's why we really need to be able to prevent it, catch it in time, and recharge ourselves. So these symptoms that you want to look out for when it comes to burnout, when you have a lot of excessive drive or perfectionism, you're really pushing yourself, and you're getting yourself really worked up and stressed over making sure you're doing it and doing it well. You're neglecting your self-care. You're not putting the charge back into yourself. You feel like you don't have time. There's too much pressure. You got to get these things done, which goes back to the perfectionism. There might be a lot of anger and blaming of others. It's really common to get really irritable. Maybe your tolerance is slipping, and you're just starting to get into a harebrained trigger. It's just super easy to kind of go off at that moment because your tolerance level is waning with your burnout. You might feel very fatigued. Have sleep problems, and that can go either way. You might be not sleeping because your mind keeps whirling, you can't fall asleep, or maybe you're sleeping too much because all you want to do is shut down. We might be trying to escape from our stress with mindless things, TV or food, alcohol, drugs, things that just kind of numb us out so we don't have to focus and address the problem. But the more we don't address the problem, the more it sticks around, and the more we have to medicate with mindless, numbless things. And that's going to create a really negative view of ourselves and others. It's going to make us really angry. It's going to make us really resentful. It can make us very hard on ourselves. And that's where we're going to see a lot more of that depression. We might see a lot of anxiety. And we're going to feel very empty and meaningless because we're not doing things that promote, productivity. We're not being able to do things that promote feelings of success. And just mentally and physically, just find yourselves exhausted. Like, even if you did nothing physical that day, you're still going to feel a sense of physical exhaustion. It's just like, felt like I ran a marathon, but I don't think I got off the couch. That's just the kind of drainage we're talking about. So that's when we really need to look at those self-care strategies. That's when we really need to work on our toolbox of tools to make sure we have adequate variety to tolerate and deal with the things that are coming up, because not all tools work in all situations. It's not a one size fits all. So having good variety is really important. So practicing self-care, listen to your body. Your body will try to warn you. It will try to tell you when these things are coming. And then you just have to be very in tune and self-aware. Like, I'm tired. I'm mentally exhausted. I do not want to get up and do that. When your body's trying to tell you something. Get that knot in your stomach. Your body's trying to tell you something. You feel like you're super stiff because your shoulders won't move. Your body's trying to tell you something. There's some tension there. Have realistic goals. Oof, that's hard, right? How many times have we set super high goal for ourselves, knowing that we can push ourselves, we can get there, it's gonna feel so good, and then you get maybe one thing done and you're already so tired that you just scrap the whole list. Well, that doesn't feel good either. Not meeting those goals does not help us feel like successes. So pick together a list that's actually really realistic. Put together a list that says, if I do nothing else but this, I will be satisfied. I will feel productive. And then balance that with your self-care. Balance that with what you need to feed back into yourself. So we can keep it moving. It's still progress, but we're not shutting down after that. Focus on healthy nutrition and regular exercise. Now, again, I'm not saying go run a marathon. I'm not saying, you can only have chicken and rice. But I'm saying focus on what you put in your body and focus on how you move your body. Because what we put in our body becomes the fuel for our energy levels. How we move our body becomes the catalyst for turning that fuel into energy. So we have to keep the machine that our bodies are working properly. And so sleep, good nutrition, and get your body moving regularly is going to help your physical self be able to keep moving. And then we can work on our emotional self as well. Give yourself a reward. I mean, wouldn't we all love to say, I did really good, I went to work 5 days a week this day, I'm going to take a month off. Like, that would be great. That's, again, not realistic. So instead, think about things that actually feel rewarding to you, and maybe you don't give yourself very often. Like saying, instead of focusing all on the laundry this Saturday, let's go out and go do this activity that we both really love to do. Let's actually plan it. Let's go out on a date night. Let's go to the zoo. Let's, do the things that are going to help us feel like get a little bit of a mental break. Reward yourself with things that are actually joyful. Use relaxation skills. Use them. Those are tools meant to help soothe your body down, soothe your ability to tolerate stress, and not build that toxicity up in your body. We don't do well when we hold a lot of stress all day long. Our body's not meant to do that. Our body's meant to spike up and come back down. Spike up, come back down. When we spike that stress level high and we hold it, we're doing nothing for ourselves other than causing a lot of toxicity to build. So we need to bring it down. We need to soothe our nervous system. We need to deep breathe. We need to take a break. We need to do these self-care strategies to help our body relax, and that'll help our mind let go of some of those things as well. And if you're struggling, get support. It can be a friend. It can be family. It can be a coworker. It can be a boss or supervisor. It can be our health center. It can be me. Whatever it is, you're not alone. And the more you isolate in this problem, the more it's going to grow out of control, the more it's going to get too overwhelming. You won't know where to start. So look for help and where your resources are. So the type of self-care. I know you can't really see these too in depth, so I do have this handout, and I'm not sure where we put it, Back on the food table. This handout is printed for you guys to take, but there are certain types of self-care that we really need to focus on. You know, most of the time when people think of self-care, they think of a bubble bath, they think of luxury things, but that's not really the case. Those things are nice, but that's not really what we need most of the time. Sometimes we need some of these other areas like physical self-care. We need rest, and we will get to that later because that's a little bit of a big one. We need movement. We need our ability to, you know, get our energy out. We need that ability to get the toxins out of our body. We need that physical release. Emotional. We need to do the things that we actually find interesting. And we need to be able to, you know, connect with others. We need to be able to let out and express our emotions so we're not bottling them up. We need social self-care. We need to have good boundaries with people. We need to be able to connect to our supports. We need to spend time with people who actually fill our cup and recharge our batteries. Spiritually, you know, sometimes we need to connect to something greater than ourselves, whether that is an actual like religious denomination or nature or a community involvement, something that's just greater than our own small worldview that reminds ourselves that there's a bigger world going on outside of our day-to-day. We need to be a part of it too. Personal. This is going to look like, and I'm not gonna lie, I can't read that. Yeah, like hobbies, knowing yourself, doing things that you're true to yourself. You know, if you're a person who is maybe a little more introverted, who doesn't like large social gatherings, don't force yourself into a whole bunch of large social gatherings. That's going to be a drain on you. Do things that are actually good for you and your well-being. Space. Space is looking at having a healthy living environment, having places where you feel calm, safe, secure, it's stable for you. Having a place to go that is just your comforting place. And it could be home, it could be family's home, it could be somewhere out in public, it could be somewhere in nature. But if you need a place to go to just let things off, we need to have a place like that. Financial and work. These are things that are going to help us manage our stress levels as much as possible. And so really creating the environments that we need in those areas. So financial, you know, when we're spending recklessly, that's going to bring above our stress levels. So whatever your goals are financially, are you on track with them? Are you managing money? Do you have a plan? Do you have savings? Do you have an idea of what you're going to do in an emergency? Having security in that way helps us be able to let go of some of those areas of stress. And work, you know, having good boundaries, having a good way to, you know, deal with stress. Maybe that means like I have a really good coworker who I talk to. Maybe I have a really good boss who lets me come in and share my frustration. Maybe I have a good way to like further my learning, get better at my own skill levels, help me do my job a little bit better. And that helps me feel like I can do what I'm doing and manage that stress level. So remember when I said that the physical level of self-care involved rest, and that was really important? There's actually 7 kinds of rest that we want to be aware of. So obviously there's a physical kind of rest, you know, sleep. Sleep is huge. We want sleep. We also need active rest in our physical sense, which is stretching, which is moving our body, which is actually relaxing our muscles and moving them. We also need sensory rest. We need to unplug. We need to get away from screens. We need to get away from social media from time to time. We need to just unplug and be in our surroundings. We need emotional rest. If somebody's draining you, we need some time away from them. We need some time with supports to actually fill our cup. We need that emotional rest to allow ourselves space to just think what we think and feel what we feel. You know, a lot of times we distract ourselves so well, we fill our day top to bottom, that by the time we want to go to bed, we can't shut down because our thoughts are like, okay, since you're not busy, I have a lot of things that I want to talk to you about. So give yourself time to process what's going on in my mind. Give it some time to just be what it is. Spiritually, you know, we need to connect into places, people, communities. We need to rest in that level. You know, sometimes it's, you know, being a volunteer in a greater community organization. Sometimes it's just time with a spiritual book, a self-development book, your Bible, whatever the case may be, just having some rest in that greater sense. Mental rest. Schedule short breaks. Journal. get things off your mind, creative, rest, do things that are actually going to help you connect into that creative side, do things that allow you to see the beauty in things, whether that's being out in nature, whether that's photography, whether that's, some sort of creative endeavor that just allows you to connect to that greater sense of self. And social, this is surrounding yourself with people who are going to be healthy, positive supports. This is the type of people who fill you up, not drain you. This is the type of people who you feel completely yourself around and you can let your guard down. So getting extra help, when to seek services, there's usually a continuum. Sometimes it's, we're doing fine, there's minor differences, but we're managing. We're in that ready phase. We can handle the stresses that are come up, and ultimately we feel pretty balanced. We're doing actually pretty good. And then we move into that next category of reacting. That's when things are building up. That's when we start to see it actually having an impact in our life. It's starting to negatively creep in. Things like maybe you're not sleeping as much. Maybe you're having a change in attitude. You're getting a little bit more snippy. You're starting to start fights a little bit. You're getting a little bit of, rocky relationships. You might get a little more critical, like you're avoiding certain things a little bit more, and you're just losing interest in things that normally you would have a lot of enjoyment with. And then we move into the injured category, and this is where it's actually taking a pretty big toll. These are things like having major sleep issues, getting an emotionally numb feeling where you're just kind of shutting down. You just can't bring yourself to bring that much care back in. You just can't bring yourself to really feel a lot because it's just too hard. And so you get a lot of burnout. You might be experiencing nightmares. You might be, at a point where you go in, there might be a diagnosis and you might be experiencing some diagnosable level of depression or anxiety. It might have gotten to the level where it's really impacting your life in a significant way. You might feel very exhausted. You might actually be getting the physical symptoms of that unmanaged stress, stomach issues, irritable bowel syndrome, headaches. You can be nauseous all the time. You're going to start to see it play out in your body. You're going to feel trapped. You're just going to be suffering, and you're going to be isolating. So you're doing this, and you're going to be feeling alone, like you can't reach out to people. This is a very, very important time to start looking for that additional help and support. This is going to be that key point, because if we go further, we're in that critical stage. This is where it gets dangerous. This is where we actually start to see people get to that really dangerous part about thinking about suicide. This is where we're getting to the part where, maybe they cannot sleep. They just cannot shut down, and that's very dangerous for their bodies. We're getting to that point where you're just feeling very hopeless. You might be getting panic attacks at that point. It's not just anxiety anymore. It's taking it to that next physical level. We're going to have intrusive thoughts. We're going to feel out of control. We're going to be very angry and very sad. We're going to be feeling just a whole mix of emotions. And so this is where we're going to see now it's impacting relationships to the point where there's no return, there's no fixing this. And now we've just created more loss in our life, more stress in our life. So one of the things that we really need to do is assess at what point do I need to recognize that I can't do this on my own. I think if you're in that reacting phase, there's probably a lot you can do for yourself. Really focusing on your self-care, really figuring out, am I using my tools? Am I reaching out to my supporters? That could be enough right there to get you back to the ready phase. If you get to the injured place and you're just not able to do for yourself, that may be when we need to start seeking other help. We need to go to our resources. We need to come to counseling. We need to go to our provider, our medical provider. We need to talk to someone who can help guide us back to where we want to be. And if we're getting to the critical point there, a lot of times we're not in a mindset to make good decisions for ourselves anyway. This is sometimes where we see the more intensive roles being taken, the more intensive routes being taken. Somebody might have to do a welfare check. Somebody might say we need to go to the hospital. We don't really want to get to that level because at that point it has to play out the way it's going to play out. So how we can help. So here at Marathon, we do have the family clinic down the road, and you can call us and you can make an appointment with myself. I'm here, like you said, 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. It can be individual counseling. It can even just be a mental health check-in. You're just not sure where you're at on that level. And you want to say, I don't know if I need therapy, but I need to talk to somebody. there's a way we can do that. We can do just a quick 30-minute check-in. That's not an appointment, but just enough to discuss what's going to be good for you. There's also the continuum EAP. You know, I know this is thrown out a lot, but it's truly a good resource because not only do they offer mental health resources, they offer financial resources, they offer legal resources. And again, this is no cost to you as an employee. So being able to schedule appointments, being able to know your resources, being able to understand where do I go for this information is the first step. Being able to take control of that and work it back to a better balance. Any questions? I know I throw a lot at you. Okay, well, yeah, in the back.
Is there a place where we can access the different, brochures, whatever? I know you put this in back there. You get a couple of things like the sleep and stuff like that. Is there a place to access it?
I don't have anything up like on the internet, but I can send them over to Peyton and she can put them up there. Or if you ever want, you can email me. I don't know if my email's on there. You can always email me and I'll send them directly to you. A lot of these are just things I found over the years that I've liked, and so I just have an electronic copy on my computer. Anyone else questions? Well, thank you guys for coming in and letting me talk with you today. This is obviously a topic that I feel very passionately about, and I could talk for a really long time. So thank you for listening to me then.